Among the forces of darkness in Final Fantasy, the most feared and infamous are the Four Fiends. Throughout their incarnations, they tend to be some of the most powerful opponents the party faces in their adventure, and play major roles in the story. In the Japanese versions, the Four Fiends are referred to as the Shintenno, which translates as the Four Heavenly Kings. The Four Heavenly Kings are a concept originating from Buddhism, and refers to four gods, or devas, that each watch over one of the cardinal directions of the world. They serve Sakra, the lord of the devas and ruler of Trayastrimsa, one of the heavens in Buddhist cosmology. The concept of the Four Heavenly Kings exists throughout Eastern Asia under different names, such as the Four Guardians, the Four Gods, and the Four Great Kings. Because of the wide spread of Buddhism across Asia for thousands of years, the concept of the Four Heavenly Kings has spread throughout culture and mythology, and intermingled with other belief systems and groups of otherworldly beings. Similar groups of four can be found everywhere, especially in China. The Four Symbols, the Four Holy Beasts, the Four Perils, and more. This is why many works of fiction from Eastern Asia often have major villains who form a group of four, possibly with a fifth member that commands or outranks them. The Elite Four in the Champion, the Spiral King and his generals, Copy X and the Guardians, and far too many more examples to list here. In Final Fantasy, the Four Fiends represent a corruption of the forces of nature, and are often connected to the crystals, either directly or at least thematically. Accordingly, there is one fiend for each of the four elements: earth, fire, water, and wind. The iconic Four Fiends are the originals from the first Final Fantasy, and they have appeared in numerous titles either as direct allusions to the game or evoking its imagery. However, some games have their own group of fiends, and may utilize the original Four Fiends in a major role beyond just being an allusion to the first game. As previously mentioned, the concept of a group of four otherworldly beings is found throughout mythology worldwide, not just Eastern Asia. Accordingly, there are many times in Final Fantasy where a group of four beings are featured that are closely associated with the crystals, or are particularly dangerous and high-ranking enemies. For example, there are the Guardians of the Dark Crystals in Final Fantasy III, or the Maesters of Yevon in Final Fantasy X. There have also been several appearances of the Four Symbols. But because such quartets are not incarnations of the Four Fiends, they will not be covered in this video. The Four Fiends of Final Fantasy consist of Lich of Earth, Monolith of Fire, Kraken of Water, and Tiamat of Wind. The four station themselves at the shrines where the power of the four forces spring: the Cavern of Earth, Mount Gold, the Sunken Shrine, and the Flying Fortress. The Warriors of Light must defeat each of the fiends to free the power of the four forces and restore the light to the crystals. Each of the Four Fiends became active in intervals of 200 years. Tiamat awoke 400 years ago and destroyed the Defenian civilization, and Kraken awoke 200 years ago and destroyed the civilizations in the northwest. Lich awoke shortly before the events of the game in the southwest, and is the first fiend to be destroyed. His defeat causes Monolith to awaken in the southeast 200 years ahead of her time, and she is the second fiend to fall, followed by Kraken and Tiamat. With the crystals restored, the Circle of Sages revealed that the true mastermind behind the fiends has traveled 2,000 years into the past, and the fiends were focusing the power of the four forces at the geographic center of the world where their power intersects: the Chaos Shrine. The Warriors of Light used the crystals to travel back in time and explore the restored Chaos Shrine. Throughout it, they face the Four Fiends again, more powerful than before, and then meet their master, Garland. Garland explains that when the Warriors of Light defeated him at the start of the game, the power of the four forces sent him back in time, and from there he sent the fiends into the future, creating a time loop that will see him be reborn over and over. Garland transforms into chaos and is destroyed, severing the time loop. Lich uses Tier 2 elemental spells and the status spells Sleep, Hold, and Slow, as the original Final Fantasy did not have an earth element. In his rematch, his sole offense is Flare, and the spells Warp, Kill, and Stop. Monolith uses Fire, Dark, and Hold in her first battle, and Firaga, Death, and Stun in her rematch. Kraken's sole ability is Ink, and in his rematch he also uses Thundara. Tiamat uses Thunderbolt, Blaze, Ice Storm, and Poison Gas, and in her rematch also uses Scourge and Tier 2 elemental magic. The final boss of the game, Chaos, is able to use Earthquake, Blaze, Tsunami, and Cyclone, thematically evoking the power of the Four Fiends and the Four Forces. While the Fiends themselves do not have these abilities in this game, other appearances treat these attacks as their signature moves. Stranger of Paradise is a prequel and pseudo-retelling of the original Final Fantasy. In this title, the Four Fiends are, in a sense, reincarnations of Jack's comrades. In the Fool's Missives, Astos explains that when darkness, negative emotions, and a strong will combine, they can resonate with one of the crystals and transform a being into a fiend. In this manner, Sophia becomes Tiamat, Neon becomes Monolith, Ash becomes Lich, and Jed becomes Kraken. Their nature being bound to the crystals prevents them from being erased when the Lufenians reset the world, and it is implied that each time Jack and his allies have entered the world of Cornelia, the negative emotions and memories they leave behind are a catalyst for the Fiends to reform in the next cycle. Tiamat is the first of the Fiends to be fought, and attacks by conjuring gusts of winds in various formations, and uses its head and tail to deal physical attacks. It can also emit blasts of energy from its mouths, and will do so from all 6 heads simultaneously in various ways. Monolith primarily uses combos with her many swords, slashing while quickly moving about the area, and she can also emit waves of energy and fire from her blades. After depleting half her HP, she ignites her swords and fire to power up her attacks, and begins using Inferno and Flaming Fury to make more direct use of fire magic. Lich teleports around the arena to attack from range with various spells, including Gaia's Wrath and Earthquake, and it can conjure undead to fight for it and empower it to cast Flare when they are destroyed. The final fiend to be faced is Kraken, who attacks with its tentacles in various ways, and can leap into the water around the arena to move around. It weaponizes its element with waves of bubbles and streams of water, and Tsunami, which releases a burst of water around it when it leaps back onto the arena from underwater. Final Fantasy IV features its own Four Fiends. While simply referred to as the Four Fiends in the original Super NES localization, the Game Boy Advance and Pixel Remaster scripts name them the Elemental Lords, and the DS and PSP scripts use the term Archfiend, which is more common than the former in their other appearances. The group consists of Scarmiglione of Earth, Cagnazor of Water, Barbaricia of Wind, and Rubicante of Fire. The four take their names from the Malabresh, a group of demons in the Divine Comedy. Their names respectively mean Ruffle-Haired, Bad Dog, Curly Beard, and Red. The Archfiends have a unique boss theme, Battle with the Four Fiends, which is used during all of their boss fights as well as the fight with Golbez. A particularly popular fan remix of the theme was composed by Hyodane, which gives the theme humorous lyrics. Unlike the original Fiends, the Archfiends have no connection to the crystals in this game. They are simply powerful monsters serving Golbez. Golbez dispatches Scarmiglione to kill Cecil before he becomes a paladin on Mount Ordeals. Scarmiglione attacks with an army of zombies, but is defeated. However, killing him awakens his true power, and he ambushes Cecil and his allies from behind in a stronger form. When Cecil returns to Baron, he learns that the king of Baron is actually Cagnazzo, who had killed the king and taken his place to take control of Baron for Golbez. Barbaricia is faced atop the Tower of Zot, her home that Golbez uses as its base of operations for the first part of the game. Finally, Rubicante is faced in the Tower of Babel as the party attempts to reclaim the crystals Golbez has taken. The four are resurrected and return within the Giant of Babel and face Cecil and his allies all at once, but are once again destroyed. Scarmiglione's only attack in his first form is Thunder, and in his second form he concentrates on powerful physical blows and debilitating the party with status ailments. Cagnazzo will summon water around himself to prepare to use Tsunami, but the water can be dispelled by casting lightning spells against him. He will also withdraw into his shell to boost his defenses and begin healing himself. Barbaricia uses Tornado to reduce targets to single-digit HP, and Ray, which inflicts gradual petrify. She will regularly surround herself in a whirlwind that causes normal attacks to miss. The only way to disrupt her is to strike from above, using Kane's jump. Rubicante uses Fyra, Thyraga, and Inferno, and when he shields himself with his Cloak of Flame, all elemental attacks, even ice, will heal him. When faced together in the Giant of Babel, the party fights them one at a time, with the next Archfiend coming in when the last is defeated. The exact order in which they appear varies between different ports of the game. Exclusive to the 3D versions is a new super boss, Urthlyon, who represents the combined malice of the Archfiends and appears as a combined form of the four. Urthlyon, too, is named after a demon in the Divine Comedy. It is able to use the signature attacks of each Archfiend: Curse, Tsunami, Maelstrom, Lightning, and Inferno. In the sequel The After Years, Eblon is under attack by Ifrit under the control of the mysterious girl, and when Edge confronts Ifrit and is overwhelmed, he sees a vision of Rubicante. Rubicante uses Inferno on Edge, which gives Edge the idea to use an explosion to disperse the flames. Edge and Rydia learn the Inferno Band, which they use to great effect against Ifrit. During the descent into the depths of the True Moon, various crystals found along the way spawn bosses from the original game, including the Archfiends. The Archfiends were revived against their will by the Creator, and are grateful to the party for slaying them and returning them to their slumber. The Archfiends fight in an identical manner to the original game, though of course they have higher stats, and Scarmiglione has upgraded to Thundaga. The player also has the option to battle Rubicante using only Edge, and if they prevail they receive the Flame Scarf, his signature cloak of flame. The original Four Fiends appear further down in the depths, along with numerous other bosses from other Final Fantasy titles. Lich uses Bio and Earthquake, Monolith casts Firaga and Blaze and enfeebles the party with Entice and Silence. Kraken uses Deluge and Blizzaga as well as Constrict and Bile, and Tiamat uses Maelstrom, Thermal Rays, Lightning, Thunderbolt, and Venomous Gas. The Archfiends, in turn, appear in the Game Boy Advance and PSP ports of Final Fantasy, as a quartet of bosses in the new bonus dungeon, Hellfire Chasm. Scarmiglione and Cagnazzo are encountered on the 5th floor, and Barbaricia and Rubicante on the 10th. In both cases, the player only needs to defeat one or the other to open the exit. Final Fantasy IX features the Four Fiends late in the story, as part of the game's many allusions to previous Final Fantasy titles. Within Ipsen's castle, the party finds 4 mirrors that must be taken to elemental shrines around the world to open a portal to Terra. The Earth Shrine is in a barren area beset by earthquakes, the Fire Shrine is within a volcanic crater, the Water Shrine is within a whirlpool, and the Wind Shrine is in a gusty valley. The party members split up into pairs to tackle each shrine at once, and Zidane and Quina head to the Earth Shrine. There they encounter the Earth Guardian, while other characters fight guardians of their respective elements off-screen. As in the original Final Fantasy, when the 4 guardians are defeated, the power of their shrines converges on the map to open a portal to a parallel world where a man named Garland resides. The Earth Guardian casts Tier 3 elemental magic and also uses Earthquake, dealing Earth elemental damage to the party. It is notably the only boss in the game that Quina can eat, allowing them to learn Earthshake as blue magic. While only the Earth Guardian is fought by the player, the game data includes 3 blank spots in the enemy list around the Earth Guardian's entry, implying the other 3 may have been intended to be fought as well. Curiously, the Water Guardian is never seen on screen, though concept art for it exists. In the final dungeon, Momoria, the party encounters Malois, Tiamat, Kraken, and Lich during their trek through the dungeon, and the 4 referred to as the Chaos Guardians. While not explicitly stated, the 4 Guardians of Terra are clearly based on the Chaos Guardians, as they resemble their counterparts in a less powerful state. Kuja states he manifested the Chaos Guardians from the memories of the crystal at the heart of Momoria, and Malois seems to recognize the party, but what exactly this means in regards to their connection to the Guardians of Terra is unclear. Malois attacks with both sword combos and fire magic, and can use Mustard Bomb to inflict the heat status. When defeated, she uses Raining Swords, dealing heavy damage to the party. Tiamat uses Jetfire, Twister, and will cast Float on party members to render them vulnerable to Snort, which removes them from the battle. Kraken uses Watergun and Freeze, and its tentacles are separate enemies that can counter attacks for it with Watergun and Ink. Finally, Lich uses Earthshake, Earthquake, Venom Powder, Doom, Death, and Death Cutter, a physical attack that inflicts doom. In Final Fantasy XIV, Golbez and the Archfiends appear as the primary antagonists of the patch 6.0 storyline that begins after the events of Endwalker. They dwell on the 13th, a reflection of the original world that became an Aetherstalk void due to the machinations of the Ascians, and its inhabitants became void-sent. Golbez began a plan to save the beings of the 13th and recruited 4 powerful Voidsent, naming them his Archfiends. He granted them a portion of Aether from the captured dragon Azdaja, empowering them greatly. In the post-Endwalker questline, the Warrior of Light and the Scions of the Seventh Dawn enter the Void to save Azdaja. On their initial expedition, the group runs afoul of Scarmiglione, and though they defeat him, he returns, for death does not exist in the 13th. With aid from Zero, Scarmiglione is defeated again and sealed in a Memoria crystal. In retaliation, Barbaricia goes to dispatch them, but she too is defeated and sealed. Golbez orders the remaining 2 Archfiends to prevent further disruptions to his plan. Cagnazzo acts as a distraction to lure the heroes to him and give Rubicante an opportunity to destroy the gate to the 13th they were using, but in the process both are defeated. However, Rubicante reveals this is Golbez's plan for them. By being destroyed on the source instead of the 13th, the Voidsent can rejoin the Ethereal Sea and finally die. The backstories of the Archfiends before they became Voidsent are told through flashbacks after their defeats. Scarmiglione was the commander of a fortress garrison that hid while his men were slaughtered by an Eidolon. For his cowardice he was struck down by his superiors and buried with his men, but he dug his way out of his own grave, determined to live. Barbaricia was a noblewoman whose parents were dominating and refused to let her leave their home. When she snuck out to meet with friends, her father found out and killed them for being unfit company. She flew into a rage and murdered him, and became a warrior known for her brutality and beauty. Cagnazzo was a fisherman who tired of his monotonous life and became a warrior, but he owed no allegiance to anyone and fought only for the thrill of it. Rubicante was a mage who honed his craft in fire magic to use his skills to protect people. When he and his friend and fellow mage defended a village from monsters, his comrade was struck down in the fight. Furious with his own failure, he buried his friend and returned to training alone. Save for Barbaricia, each of the 4 was given their moniker by onlookers. Scarmiglione for his disheveled appearance after rising from the grave, Cagnazzo for his wild rampages on the battlefield, and Rubicante for the red of his face in his anger. Scarmiglione and Cagnazzo are dungeon bosses, while Barbaricia and Rubicante are trial bosses, so the former 2 have relatively simpler mechanics. Scarmiglione relies on debilitating status ailments, and will summon zombies to attack the party for him, while he charges his strongest attack, Corruptor's Pitch. In addition to numerous wind spells, Barbaricia has several attacks themed around her hair, which surrounds the arena and can entangle party members to restrict their movements. Cagnazzo uses numerous water attacks, and will charge water around himself in preparation for Tsunami, while pitting players against aids called Fearsome Flotsam. Rubicante will create 3 rings around the arena, with lines leading to magic crests on the edge. He sends flames down along the lines, treating them like fuses to make the magic crests explode. As the fight wears on, the 3 rings will rotate and change the formation of the fuses running through them, making it more difficult to tell which crest will explode next. The 14 incarnation of the Archfiends is also notable for the music. While Scarmiglione and Cagnazzo use a remix of Final Fantasy IV's boss theme, and Barbaricia uses a remix of Battle with the Four Fiends, Rubicante uses a remix of the theme strongly reminiscent of Hyadin's remix. After the release of the patch, 14 composer Masayoshi Soken confirmed that Hyadin, real name Kenichi Miyamada, had served as a guest composer for the arrangement. The concept of the Four Fiends is given a human spin in Final Fantasy Dimensions with the 4 generals of the Avalon Empire, who are each associated with a particular elemental magic. Valgalvin commands fire, Asmodai commands earth, Styx commands water, and Vada commands wind. There are also a secondary group that command the remaining 4 elements, the Divine Generals: Shango of Lightning, Carcaddus of Ice, Imperio of Light, and Gehenna of Darkness. Valgalvin is the first of the 4 generals met, when he attacks the Warriors of Light aboard a stolen airship. Though he nearly defeats them, they are protected by Elgo, and a flock of Wyverns attacks the airship, forcing Valgalvin to retreat while the airship crashes. The warriors meet Vada next atop the High Wind Tower, where he heals the Dragoon Barbara before engaging them. He feigns defeat in order to allow a crystal to manifest from Barbara's spear, granting the warriors the Dragoon job, and Vada then takes a portion of the power to become a Dragoon himself. He attacks again, but retreats to Cid's airship. Styx is met at an underwater temple masquerading as a sea witch who has imprisoned a mermaid as bait to lure the warriors of light to her. Finally, the warriors of darkness are the ones to meet Asmodai, who had disguised himself as the king of Alfheim to surrender the kingdom of Avalon after the true king, Freyr, refused them and was robbed of his memories. The four generals act as major recurring antagonists in the first half of the game, while the divine generals serve as major antagonists in the second half. Imperio in particular acts as the final boss of the game's penultimate chapter. He is the Emperor's right-hand man and a figurehead who speaks for the Emperor, and Gehenna is revealed to be his alter ego. Vada of the four generals outlives both groups and survives into the final chapter, where he sacrifices himself to aid the warriors of light and darkness. Final Fantasy Dimensions 2 features the Four Fiends of the original Final Fantasy as its main antagonists for the first half of the game. The four appear spread across different time periods that Moro and his allies travel between, and manifest from powerful vortexes of darkness. The party encounters a Lich in the Crystal Temple in the year 2 BC, and Kraken on the Big Bridge in 1280 AD, but do not understand what these beings are, and while they defeat them on their initial encounters, they seem to reform. In the year 2015, the party faces Monolith, who is disguised as Marina, leader of Ajima, to incite war between nations. She names their group the Four Chaoses, who spread themselves across different time periods to sow chaos. Leviathan explains the Chaoses are born from the primordial disorder from the dawn of time, and are temporal anomalies that exist on a higher plane outside the normal laws of time. In the year 2499, the party finds a being calling itself Chaos, and it transforms into Tiamat. The party learns that since chaos exists on a higher plane, it cannot be destroyed entirely, so they seek aid from the Eidolons, as they also exist on a higher plane. Vortexes of chaos intensify throughout history, and the party goes to stop them and fight the Four Chaoses again, who have become even stronger. The party gains the power to defeat them permanently by having the Eidolons empower the four crystals of their corresponding elements, and with the aid of Titan, Shiva, Ifrit, and Ramu, one by one Lich, Kraken, Monolith, and Tiamat are defeated. With all four chaoses gone, the vortexes across time vanish. However, the fifth chaos manifests, taking on the form of Bahamut, the god of destruction. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest has its own set of fiends, the Vile Four: Flameless Rex of Earth, Ice Golem of Water, Dual-Head Hydra of Fire, and Pazuzu of Wind. The four each steal the light of the crystals in their altars around the world, causing the regions of the world to suffer catastrophes. Forestia becomes a decaying wasteland, Aquaria is frozen over, Fireberg is set by earthquakes from volcanic activity, and Windia is engulfed in fierce gales. Benjamin and his allies eventually defeat the Vile Four, allowing the crystal they were protecting to shine again and restore their part of the world. In the final dungeon, Doom Castle, each floor is themed around the lair of one of the Vile Four, and contains a palette swap of each of them as a boss: Skullvus Rex, Stone Golem, Twinhead Ravern, and Zur. At the top of Doom Castle, Benjamin confronts the being commanding the Vile Four, the Dark King. The Four Fiends of Final Fantasy are often alluded to in other titles, particularly in regards to Garland or Chaos. The Archfiends are referenced less often, but do get the occasional nod. In particular, Rubicante is a breakout character of the Archfiends, and has been added as a playable character to Dissidia Opera Omnia and Final Fantasy Record Keeper, and the latter also features Barbaricia as a playable character. Rubicante's Opera Omnia appearance has him invoke the power of the other Archfiends in his burst finisher, where he summons the weapons of Guryon to unleash elemental attacks with. All four Archfiends are playable in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. Garmiglione specializes in status and debuffing attacks and lightning magic, Cagnazzo is a tank who draws attacks and boosts his defenses, and Barbaricia and Rubicante are mages who specialize in offensive magic in their respective elements. Monolith has also been added to the game as a playable character. Her addition is relatively recent as of this video's release, so it is unknown if the other fiends will join her in time. In Dissidia Final Fantasy and its related titles, Garland's shape-shifting claymore represents the fiends with its various forms: an axe for Lich, twin swords for Monolith, a flail for Kraken, and a lance for Tiamat. Garland uses these forms of his claymore in his HP attacks, which also reflect the Fiends: Earthquake, Blaze, Tsunami, and Cyclone. The Chaos Shrine Arena contains portraits of the Four Fiends in its corners, and the Fiends can be acquired as summon stones. Each of them has an effect that activates after a timer expires. Lich drains the opponent's bravery to 0, Margolin freezes the opponent's bravery, Kraken swaps the bravery of the characters, and Tiamat triples the summoner's bravery. The Archfiends of Final Fantasy IV appear as summons with effects mirroring their counterparts in their respective hierarchies, and are automatically triggered when the opponent uses their summon. The Archfiends also give their name to the Elemental Archfiend equipment set. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance has a squad of the Red Rings called the Falgabirds. They consist of a zombie named Lich, a Lamia named Margolin, an Ice Flan named Kraken, and a Thundrake called Tiamat. In Final Fantasy Record Keeper, 3 of the 4 Chaoses from Final Fantasy IX serve as the rank 4 Magicite bosses in their respective elements: Malorus, Kraken, and Tiamat. Lich is the exception, with Midgard Soma of Final Fantasy VI taking its place. All 4 of them can be acquired as Magicite, though the Earth Guardian is used in place of Lich. World of Final Fantasy initially featured Kraken and Tiamat as normal mirages. Tiamat is transfigured from the Dual Lizard and can learn Acid Mist, Jetfire, and Thunderbolt, while Kraken is transfigured from the Mind Flayer and can learn Waterer, Tsunami, and Evil Mist. Though they were not standout mirages in the original release, the Maxima version adds Lich and Margolin to complete the 4 Fiends. Lich learns Death Cutter, Quake, Flare, Bio, Doom, and Death, while Margolin learns Double Cut, Blade Dance, Fire, and Dark. The player faces the 4 Fiends individually in the new Hidden Dungeon, and at the end of the dungeon faces Garland alongside the 4 Fiends. In addition to their normal moves, these incarnations of the 4 Fiends can use Earthquake, Blaze, Tsunami, and Whirlwind. As each of the Fiends fall, Garland becomes weak to their element, but also acquires their signature attack to use himself. Thank you to everyone for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more lore Final Fantasy in the future, and stop by the community tab on my channel to vote on the next subject.